For the rugged. Been a little too nice to y'all. Now I gotta up price for y'all. Snake eyes on dice for y'all. Shoulders on ice for y'all.
Yo, what's going on? It is Miguel. Welcome back to the channel, and in this video we're going to go even deeper on another topic inside of reality transurfing. And in this particular topic we are going to talk about guilt. This is another form of excess potential and a way of having balancing forces come into your life and wipe you out. If you are unaware of exactly what excess potential is, I strongly urge that you go watch my excess potential video, because I'm going to be I go in much more in depth in what that is and how it works and how balancing forces come in and try to even everything out, and how that could be detrimental to you if you are the one creating excess potential. So I do believe that you'll still be able to understand what this video is talking about even if you don't watch that video, but it will make more sense if you watch that video first. Now let's go ahead and get into it. I'm sure you can always you can guess what guilt is when you feel guilty of something, and any feeling that is in that area is going to make you start to create excess potential, and it's one of the worst ways to make excess potential because it is pure. It is a pure form of excess potential, and balancing forces will try and get rid of that as fast as humanly possible. So there are two different directions that you can go in terms of creating guilt for yourself, or just in terms of guilt in general. The first direction is obviously if you do something bad and you feel bad for it, then you immediately create guilt, and because of that, balancing forces will come in and wipe you out. It will basically punish you. If you create guilt and you're like, I feel guilty, I should be punished, the universe will go, okay. On the other hand, if you start acting well and you become aware of it and you start feeling like you should be rewarded, it's not going to act in the way where the universe is going to say, okay. It's going to be like, this person is full of themselves. We need to balance this out. That's excess potential. So it'll wipe you out. Now, it says balanced forces have no concept that something should be rewarded and others punished. They simply eliminate inhomogeneity in the energy field. I can't tell you exactly what inhomogeneity is supposed to be, but I know homeostasis means balance. And if you feel like you're hot stuff and you should be rewarded, or if you feel like you feel really bad because you did something and you feel bad about it, then that is no longer balance. It's no longer in homeostasis. So that's what I can imagine that word means, and balance forces literally are just there to bring everything back level. So I'm going to keep going back in this book because I feel like I can explain things further, but it's best if I read a lot of things straight from the book because it explains a lot of things very particular in wording that is very beneficial. So it says the payment for feelings of guilt will always be punished in one form or another. If you do not feel guilty, then punishment not be forthcoming. Unfortunately, feelings of pride that you experience when you have done something good will also lead to punishment rather than reward, because the purpose of balanced forces is to eliminate excess potential of pride, whereas a reward would only enhance it. So that is the reason why you don't get rewarded when you think, I did something good. I should get something good out of this. No, because if the universe were to give you that, you would start to feel that even more, and then balanced forces aren't doing their job. And if that's why when you feel guilty and you feel like I should be punished, the universe will punish you, because once they do, that feeling of guilt will be gone, because you'll be like, oh, okay, I got punished. I no longer have to feel guilty about this. The universe, the world took care of it for me. Whereas if it didn't punish you, you would continue to feel guilty, and that excess potential would continue to be there. Now, let's go to the next passage. This is what the feeling of guilt does. It brings nothing useful or creative, only destruction. It is better to avoid doing anything that would later cause you to feel guilty than to torture yourself with a guilty conscience. once you say to yourself that you have not actually done anything wrong, it is totally futile to continue torturing yourself with a guilt complex. The feelings you suffer will not benefit anyone, least of all you. So basically what this is saying is, if you do not feel guilty, then the universe has no reason to come after you because no excess potential has been created. This is why, and I've had this conversation with a couple of people who learn about stuff like this and go, well, why do serial killers manage to get away from stuff? Shouldn't the universe try and like want to get rid of them because they're doing bad stuff? You would think so, and in the end, a lot of them do end up getting caught, but they do not feel guilty, which is because they are psychopaths. They've lost that part of themselves that creates guilt for harming another person. And because of that, no excess potential is created and they get away with stuff. There's probably tons of murderers who have gotten away with it that we just don't hear much about because the police force or the government doesn't want to look bad in that case. But if they aren't guilty and they're actually not dumb and they're doing certain things right, then there's a high likelihood that they will not be caught because they have no feelings of guilt. But that's not to say you should be running around doing bad things and just trying to absolve yourself of guilt, because if you're a naturally good person, that means that you are going to feel guilty whenever you start doing things that are bad. So the best thing that you can do is to just not put yourself in those situations. Be a good person and you'll never feel guilty, and then you'll never have to deal with that excess potential. All right, so it says, the need to lecture and guide is a consequence of doubt and uncertainty that plagues a person's souls. They skillfully hide their inner struggle from themselves and those around them. Lacking the inner strength that truly decent people possess, the manipulator seeks self-assertion at the expense of others. So I highlighted this. It was in the same chapter as guilt. It's not really in terms of guilt, but I felt like it was important to highlight this. And the reason for that is because it just talks about how, like, if you're running around lecturing people and trying to constantly give advice and you feel like you're some superior being and people should listen to you, you're messing up balance forces in that exact moment. And I felt like it was important to even mention that on this video, because you're obviously someone who enjoys learning things, enjoys having tons of information, and it feels good whenever you pass that information along to people because you know it can have a beneficial impact on someone's life, but it's best just to keep certain stuff to yourself. So this is a lot that I highlighted. Let me just see if it's even worth going over this. Yep, okay. This is definitely worth going over. So, yeah, just read it. As soon as a person indicates that they are willing to absorb guilt, a manipulator will stick to that person like glue and feed on their energy. So there's manipulators, and then there's people who have that guilt complex. The manipulator is the one who takes advantage of that, and the person who feels guilty is obviously the person who feels guilty. This dynamic can be avoided simply by refusing to take on feelings of guilt. You do not have to justify yourself to anyone, and you do not owe anybody anything. If you are to blame for something, then you can accept the punishment as long as you do not get stuck in the position of the guilty party afterwards. You do not owe those close to you anything either. After all, you care about them because you love them, not because you have been coerced into doing so. This is a completely different matter. If you have a tendency to justify yourself, start letting go of it. Once manipulative individuals realize they no longer have a way of hooking into your energy, they will leave you alone. So this is sort of like there's just people who feed on the energy of others in any sort of way, and this is one way. There's like energy vampires, which we'll talk about eventually because he does mention that in this book. And then another form of person are manipulators, and they're people who they can tell you get guilty. sorry about that. They can tell you start to feel guilty very easily, and they can make you feel guilty by any sort of thing. Any sort of thing you could possibly imagine. Oh, you don't do this anymore. This doesn't happen. Oh my God, are you really going to say that? You're making me feel this way. Da 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 da. They're trying to manipulate you in order to get you to feel guilty, because unknowingly it's giving them a rise and they're feeding off of it. But if you never actually feel guilty and you just explain to them and you take on whatever punishment as it says, then you never actually have that balanced forces come after you. So next, guilt goes hand in hand with an inferiority complex. If you feel inferior in any way, it is because you have compared yourself to others. It is as if you create trials where you play the role of judge over yourself. In reality, it only feels as if you are the judge. The true dynamic works out slightly differently. If you have a natural predisposition to take blame upon yourself, irrespective of what the blame is about, it follows that you can also be found guilty and punished. By comparing yourself with others, you place them in a superior position of authority. In so doing, you are enabling others to suppose that they are somehow better than you. The likelihood is that other people do not actually believe that they are better than you, but if you have come to this conclusion, you end up playing the role of judge in their name. By assuming the role of the guilty party, willingly giving yourself to the court, you are effectively inviting other people to judge you. So this is talking about how, like, if you feel inferior, that naturally, like, this is what they talk about in NLP as well. In NLP, they teach you to view everyone as equal. You are not looking up to anyone, and you are not looking down to people. And I'm sure he mentions that somewhere in here as well. But if you look up to people, then you are immediately saying this person is better than me. They are more capable than me. They are a better human being, which means they have all right to judge me. And if you are being judged by the people around you, you naturally feel guilty. Just another way to bring that guilt, that excess potential into your life. So start to see everyone as equal. Now, it says appropriate action is to stand up from the accused bench and reclaim the right to be yourself. No one will dare judge you if you do not consider yourself guilty. Only you can give others the privilege of being your judge. This might all seem like empty rhetoric, because if someone has a real flaw, we all know that there will always be someone willing to point it out. This only happens, though, if they sense that you are predisposed to accepting the blame for your shortcomings. If you consider yourself guilty of being worse than others, even for a second, it will most certainly be used against you. The opposite is also true. If you are free of the feeling of guilt, it will never occur to anyone to assert themselves over you. So the only reason people even start to feel any sort of reason to poke at any shortcomings that you may or may not have. I mean, all of us have some sort of flaw, but if you shed light on it, and if you feel like other people are shedding light on it, then they naturally will, because you have those guilty feelings. Whereas if you don't feel that way, then no one will ever mention them. Think about a good example would be Patrice O'Neal, who is a super big dude, huge guy. He had like diabetes, all that stuff, RIP, and no one ever mentioned the fact that he was big, because he did not care about that. He was so unaware of the fact that he was a bigger dude, and he was hilarious and he was amazing with women, and it's because he did not care how big he was. He was just aware of what he wanted. Now it says power and courage also represent aspects of the guilt dynamic. People who have a tendency to feel guilty only subject their will to a person who is immune to the same tendency. If a person is in principle willing to admit guilt for anything at all, subconsciously they are willing to endure punishment and subordinate themselves to others. If a person is not plagued by feelings of guilt but has a need to assert themselves, then they can easily become a manipulator. So it's just talking about the power. Like, if you feel guilty, then manipulators are going to come into your life. So here we go. Boldness indicates the absence of guilt. Fear lies in the subconscious and is evoked not only by the unknown, but also by the dread of punishment. A person who is guilty theoretically agrees to bear punishment and therefore experiences fear. Brave people are never tormented by pangs of conscience, and they suffer not the slightest feeling of guilt. They have nothing to fear because their inner judge has declared that they are in the right. Quite the opposite position is true of the timid victim who is uncertain of whether or not they are behaving correctly or not. The victim fears being declared guilty, giving everyone the right to administer punishment. Even the faintest, most deeply hidden feelings of guilt can open the gates to punishment in the subconscious mind. A person who feels guilty theoretically agrees that robbers and bandits have the right to attack them as a form of punishment, and so they are afraid. So it's basically the feeling that you hold inside of yourself that determines whether or not punishment will actually come your way. Because the second you feel guilty, you basically say, the world has the right to punish me for what I have done, and they will. So people have learned that asking for forgiveness dissolves the excess potential of guilt, and it really works. So, boom, there's a way to get rid of guilt. If you are guilty, if you feel guilty of doing something, if you feel like you have wronged someone, the easy way to get rid of it, the easy way to just get rid of that excess potential is to just go and ask for forgiveness. I literally had this happen where something came up. I messed up something for a client and they were upset. And it was literally right after I read this chapter. But they were upset, and then they blew up at me a little bit, and I immediately just said, sorry, like it was my mistake, please forgive me. And they didn't respond for a while, and then the next response was, it's all right, man, let's just do this, and this. Boom! It ended. It ended right then and there. Like it's amazing just how simple a lot of this stuff can be. All right, so it says the key to personal dignity is the absence of guilt. True personal power rests on the ability to remain free of guilt and not on the ability to take someone by the throat. The famous Russian writer Anton blah 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 once said, "Drop by drop, I am squeezing the slave out of me." His phrase highlights his personal dedication to rid the conscience of any feeling of guilt. And he wraps up this chapter by saying, in transurfing, it is considered more preferable to renounce, i.e. to choose. You do not have to squeeze the feeling of guilt out of yourself. It is not enough to live by your own credo. No one has the right to judge you, and you have the right to be yourself. If you allow yourself to be you, the need for self-justification will fall away, and the fear of being punished will fade. Punished. Then something truly remarkable will happen. No one will dare insult you. Moreover, wherever you happen to be, in prison, in the army, in a gang, at work, on the street, or in a bar, you will never again find yourself in a situation where somebody will threaten you with violence. Others may from time to time be subject to violence in one form or another, but because you have renounced the feeling of guilt and driven it from your subconscious, you will reside on lifelines where scripts of punishment simply don't exist. So the reason people end up in bad situations, negative situations where they are threatened with violence or any form of punishment, it is because they feel guilty about something. And if you can absolve yourself of this, if you can choose, I do not feel guilty for my actions. I am in the right. I may make mistakes. I may not do 100% right by people, but in no way do I feel guilty. And if I feel as if I did something wrong to someone, I will ask them for forgiveness in order to absolve myself of any guilt I potentially feel. And you will put yourself on lifelines. You know how we said parallel realities, that's all the universe is. You will put yourself on lifelines where punishment does not exist. This is one of the greatest chapters of this book, in my opinion, and it's honestly just like, it's a beautiful way to live, because like you're living in a way where it's like, okay, I don't want to feel guilt, so how can I make sure I'm doing everything in a positive and kind manner? I mean, that's just a good way to live life. So thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you enjoyed the content of this video, definitely hit subscribe, like the video, turn on notifications. If you have any questions, any comments, put those down below, and check out some of the other videos I have on this channel. Until next time, peace.